So I've played the Final Fantasy franchise more than any other JRPG series. My first game being Final Fantasy Mystic Quest all the way up to 16, which I didn't finish. I'll be honest about that. But I have enjoyed them all for different reasons and to some degree or another. At the time of release, I was super unsure of Final Fantasy going back to a more medieval setting because at that time, I was used to the brooding kind of future punk of Final Fantasy 7 and 8. And being an 11-year-old, I liked the edgy main characters, Cloud and Squall. Little did I know this would turn out to be my favorite Final Fantasy game, and it's not even close. Waking up before the sun rises and going to sleep long after it's set was an all too often occurrence for me. Personally, there was a crescendo in the series, a peak, the top of the mountain that all past Final Fantasy games can really only look up to, and all future titles can only aspire to be. Final Fantasy IX is the pinnacle of the entire series, and Japanese RPGs, period. Final Fantasy IX is a Japanese role-playing game released in 2000 for the PlayStation 1. Developed and published by Square, Final Fantasy IX began development in July of '98. It would be the last Final Fantasy game developed for the original PlayStation. Producer and Final Fantasy creator Hironobu Sakaguchi wanted this game to be the game that would return the franchise to its medieval fantasy roots. He also said in an IGN interview at that time that Final Fantasy IX was his personal favorite game in the franchise, which I have to agree with him on that, and, quote, "It's the closest to his ideal view of what Final Fantasy should be," end quote. The game puts you in the shoes of Zidane Tribal, a thief of the Tantalus theater troupe hired to kidnap Princess Garnet till Alexandros of Alexandria, which has always been a mouthful. Zidane is the laid-back, outgoing, and flirtatious type, which I realized was actually way cooler than being mopey and depressed like Squall. Even though I love you, Squall, for different reasons. Over time, these two main characters grew closer and closer together, and they gathered companions and attempted to bring down Garnet's villainous mother, Queen Braun. There's a lot more to the story than that, but that is the initial setup. Garnet, aka Dagger, is a white mage and the heir to Alexandria. Little does Zidane know that she actually wants to escape her mother and Alexandria Castle, so she isn't exactly opposed to being kidnapped by Zidane. Garnet goes from a somewhat timid and naive girl to a more independent and headstrong woman and leader. Then there's Vivi, who is a young black mage. Oftentimes he is gullible and very, very shy. He lacks a lot of self-esteem, and he has a lot of fears concerning his own origins and power, but over time he becomes more brave and confident. Steiner is the leader of the Knights of Pluto. He starts with a narrow-minded view of the world and is fiercely loyal to the royal family to a fault. He really only cares about protecting Princess Garnet. Steiner is the butt of a lot of jokes and is very much comic relief, especially in the early parts of the game. I've always personally loved Steiner, and he was usually in my final party during my playthroughs. It's varied from playthrough to playthrough, but he's usually a staple of the final party of mine. There's a lot more characters that join your party on your journey too. Freya, the Burmesian Dragon Knight, longing to return to her, long lost love, Sir Fratley. Quina, a Q or a Q, I don't know how to pronounce their race, who wishes to travel the world with you and experience what different cuisines the world has to offer, which, let's be real, that is just awesome. Aiko, a young summoner who's the last of her tribe. And then there's Amarant, a bandit who wishes to stick by Zidane to discover what makes him so powerful. The game world explores themes of life and death, as well as finding one's own purpose and place in the world. I think this is best exemplified in the character of Vivi, who's going through basically an existential crisis surrounding his questionable origins and whether or not he acts on his own free will, or is he an instrument of destruction to be wielded by someone else. Vivi's story and character arc is my personal favorite plot line in Final Fantasy IX. I love it. And it really leaves an impact on the player. At least it left an impact on me. And I think most people who've played the game will agree with me on that to one degree or another. The gameplay for Final Fantasy IX isn't a far cry from previous entries, as it has turn-based combat, initiated by random monster battles. You can explore the overworld on foot, on Chocobo, and also in your airship, like past Final Fantasy games. But there are many things unique to Final Fantasy IX, like the active time events, a new aspect of Final Fantasy that aims to deepen character stories by showing what they're up to while off screen. So I might be in Alexandria and Vivi's somewhere else in a dolly in a different town. I don't think that actually happened. But while I'm in one city and he's in another city, I can click the active time event, which shows up in the bottom corner of the screen, and I can see what he's up to. And this helps build the background and the personality of other characters by seeing what they're doing while not with the protagonist and not with you personally. There's a total of 79 active time events in the game. I actually wish they would bring this back. I think it's a cool mechanic, if you can call it that. There's also Magnet, a postal system in which the player delivers and sometimes receives letters via Moogles scattered throughout the land. This is part of a larger side quest. There's also a lot of mini games. My two favorite being Chocobo Hot and Cold and Tetra Master. The former is a simple hot and cold game where you and your Chocobo look for hidden treasure by pecking at the ground and finding the loot before time expires. It's simple, mindless, and addicting because you get that dopamine hit when you do find something really, really good.
What's that? What's that, brother?
And the latter is definitely more in depth, and my personal favorite minigame in Final Fantasy IX, if not the entire series. There's a few minigames that come very, very close. And what Tetra Master is a collectible card game. I've tried on multiple playthroughs to get all the cards, but I guess I never had the patience to actually do it. And some of the cards are really, really hard to get. And a fun fact, Tetra Master was actually its own standalone title for a little while. It started in 2003, had a $1 subscription, and it ended in 2010 because apparently people don't want to pay $1 a month to play Tetra Master. I never played it personally, but I just saw that. There's a lot more mini games in that, and side quests, from jumping rope for rare cards, which I never got. God, what card was it? I can't remember. Let me know what card it was that at the very beginning of the game you can use Vivi to do the jump roping mini game. And I never got close. I got maybe halfway there at most. And then there's optional bosses, which are very hard. I still don't think I've beaten Ozma to this day. I've tried multiple times. Mind you, I have not played this game in a long time. All this was when I was like a teenager, young man. There are so many amazing aspects to Final Fantasy IX that make the game unforgettable. But it would be a crime if I didn't mention the amazing and beautiful and totally absorbing soundtrack and score written and composed by series staple Nobuo Uematsu. His work never fails to impress, and even among his Hall of Fame discography, I think this OST stands as his crowning achievement. Also, I'm sorry if I pronounced his name wrong. A couple of my favorite are Garnet's theme and Vamo a la Flamenco. I hope I'm saying that right. Also, I'm a sucker for sad, sappy melodies, and this game has that in spades. Final Fantasy IX got amazing reviews when it released, but it also failed to reach the zeitgeist of games like Final Fantasy VII or 10 or even 8. It didn't sell as well as those games, but it still managed to sell well over 5 million copies, which sounds pretty good, but for Final Fantasy, that's definitely on the low end of sales. Personally, I think the number is criminally low. And I bought it on my Xbox a couple years ago. I haven't played it, so I'm doing my part to boost the sales. I think it was a tone shift from the previous two games, as well as not having like a super iconic villain like Sephiroth from Final Fantasy VII or Kefka from Final Fantasy VI, which led to less sales. That's just my opinion. I would love to know, why don't you guys think that Final Fantasy IX sold very well? The legacy of Final Fantasy IX is one which I feel only strengthens year after year as more and more time passes. I remember the game being critically praised, but, and maybe it's just my memory of it being so long ago, it just isn't so good. But even though it was critically praised, it seems like it was forgotten relatively quickly in the grand scheme of things and in the grand scheme of Final Fantasy games. The PlayStation 2 was right around the corner, and the hype quickly switched to Final Fantasy X and the power of, the PlayStation 2, and rightfully so, because Final Fantasy X was another great game in the series. I just feel like this game wasn't appreciated enough in its own time. It was almost like a flash in the pan. It got great reviews, people who played it loved it, and then it was kind of just forgotten. It's easy to say that now with hindsight, but I only say that because for me, with each passing Final Fantasy game, I don't believe not one has reached the pinnacle that the ninth entry has, even though some were pretty close. In the late 90s and early 2000s, each Final Fantasy game and release was a true event in the gaming world. Not just RPGs and those interested in the games or franchise, but the industry as a whole. Final Fantasy was a trendsetter in storytelling, music, characters, art design, and graphic fidelity, and no game did this better at that time than Final Fantasy IX. And all those aspects still hold up to this day. For me, Final Fantasy IX is it's a timeless classic. I can't recommend it enough. I think the game is perfect. Seriously, when I write these scripts down, and I just have bullet points and then I kind of go, off the cuff a little bit. There's points I want to hit, but the point is, when I'm reading this and I'm writing this, I always have that game's OST playing in the background, and that's just so I can kind of get into the mood and get into the feel and get into the vibe of what that game has to offer. So I've had Final Fantasy IX's OST going on repeat for days now, and I am itching so bad to get back into this game. It's been way too long since I've revisited it. I want to know what stands out to you guys about Final Fantasy IX. What do you like or dislike about the game? Let me know in the comments what your favorite Final Fantasy game is, and if it's not Final Fantasy IX, which is it? And let me know why. Anyways, thank you all for watching. Consider liking and subscribing. I really, really do appreciate it. I'm trying really hard to make these quality. I'm still learning editing, blah, blah, blah. You guys don't care. But I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep putting these videos out. Thank you so much, and God bless. Have a great day.
Alone for a while, I've been searching through the dark for traces of the love you left inside my lonely heart, to weave by picking up the pieces that remain, melodies of life, love's lost refrain. Our paths they did cross, though I cannot say just why. We met, we left, we held on fast, and then we said goodbye. And who'll hear the echoes of stories never told? Let them ring